Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Roberts, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Advisory Board for the Metro New York chapter of the National Black MBA Association.
Chuck,
And welcome.
Chuck, can you start again, please?
Okay. You ready now? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Roberts, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Metro New York chapter of the National Black MBA Advisory Board. And it is a distinct honor and surely a pleasure to be here again to be the introductory voice of our resume journey event that we're offering you tonight with our illustrious Gisela Belinfante, who is going to lead us through a process over the next hour so that you can do better in your resume, have it better prepared, have it better looked at, have better thought about and planned so that next week, for example, on the 24th of February, you can present it and bring it with you to our virtual career fair. And we'll talk about that again at the end of the day. But for now, let me talk about our presenter. I had the pleasure of putting up a posting on my LinkedIn page about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And in that time of thinking of what to say about her, first of all, this is her 8th time doing this virtual career fair with us. That's got to be a world record. I think Guinness Book of Records might want to take note of that. She leads us in every time a week before our virtual career fair, making sure that you have a better chance with your resume. She's the expert in this field. She has a graduate degree in human resources. She runs a group of recruiters and HR people for one of the largest employers on Long Island. I always marvel at the fact that you get people that have so many years of experience and still are only 25 years of age. That's always amazing. So Gisela, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You're doing a great job. But what I wrote in my LinkedIn message is what I thought I should share again tonight. Gisela is a firm believer that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that applies perfectly for your resume training tonight, that it is your first impression. These people will be seeing you for the first time. We have some 15 to 17 corporations. I think I counted 18 maybe today. They're all looking to hire people in positions, but it all begins with your resume. So I'm not going to hold you up much longer. I do want to thank Marvin Vasquez and MMUSA for their work in putting this program together for us tonight. Marvin and his team do an outstanding job, as you can see. So without further ado, let me introduce Ms. Gisela Belinfante, and she's the CEO and owner of Resume Journeys. Gisela, it's on you now. Thank you.
Everyone has a journey and a story. A passion to transform your resume while providing guidance in how to be an outstanding candidate, that is what Resume Journey stands for. As the COVID-19 pandemic arose in March of this year, Resume Journeys provided assistance to many individuals out of work to help obtain positions across the United States and still continue to do so. We believe in diversity, no matter the nationality, as this fosters a culture of inclusion and elevates your skills and capabilities to perform your job. Resume Journeys, creative services such as crafting your perfect resume, interactive sessions, workshops, and career coaching. That's just to name a few. Having an extensive background in hospitality, healthcare, and customer service, with human resources experience, provided me with the insight and focus to what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for in a candidate. Our clients are people who needed the push to achieve the heights that they dreamt about, as will you. All you need is that one person to help guide you on your journey.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen with you, and then we can get started. Hi, everyone. Just want to check real quick. Can everyone see the presentation? I just want to make sure you guys can see the presentation. If you guys could just let me know via chat if you guys can see the presentation. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, greetings, welcome, good evening. I'm really glad to be here. I definitely want to thank the National Black MBA for always trusting, obviously, in me to be able to provide you guys with insight to how to make your resume stand out. And we have a jam-packed agenda. I'm too excited. I can't wait to get into it because there's so much to cover. And I really hope that is something that you will be able to apply to your resume and utilize, whether it is at the career fair next week or just in life, some skill sets that will provide you the ability to stand out for that interview. So thank you, Black MBA. Thank you, Chuck. And thank you, Marvin. Let's start. So obviously on the first page, if you guys need to reach me, I always say take a picture of this. You can definitely reach out to me via email, Instagram, text message. I'm always available. So please take a picture of that and let's get started. So as you know, you just learned a little bit about Get to Know Resume Journey. I know we had some audio issues, but Resume Journey is basically my pride and joy. It was developed some years ago, and it was really with the passion on helping others. And why do we help others? Because that's the right thing to do, right? Especially if you're in your job market and you're looking for positions and you kind of really don't have an idea of, what's going on behind the scenes, right? So, just a brief recap about me. I have the experience both on the HR side and also the administrator side. So I kind of have both ends as a hiring manager because I am currently hiring in my own role, and then also on the HR end. So it kind of blends together and gives me that insight to provide to you today. One thing I wanted to make mention, definitely write this question down and definitely take a lot of notes. So what are the questions you would like answered from this workshop, right? So just remember that question and make sure that you write down all of the questions that you want answered. Some will be answered during the course of the presentation, but if there's something that you forgot, definitely write it down and we can talk about it at the end for Q&A. So our agenda is going to cover functional resume versus a chronological resume, Resume 101, how to make your resume stand out. The look is as important as the content. How to prepare and arrive for your interview, whether that's in person or virtual, common errors to avoid, and your top skills on your resumes. And then we'll close out with Q&A. Please feel free to comment in the chat. Don't be shy. This is very open, an open forum. So anything you want to ask or that you like, always use that thumbs up feature. So I know you guys are there. Let's get started. So your resume needs to have a compelling value message. What does that mean? So basically, in other words, your resume in shape for your next important job search? Will it help you gain the attention that you want from the employer that you're targeting, right? If you haven't asked yourself these questions recently, then today is the day to do that. What is a functional resume? Functional resumes primarily focus on your skills and experience. If you want to utilize transferable skills, which I'm a big poster kid about as it relates to transferable skills, or searching for a new career, this would probably be a great resume to use, a functional resume. Now I have a question for you. And please, again, there is a lot of people on the platform, so please feel free to use the chat. But does anybody know what a CV is, or what does that mean? What's a CV? Has anyone ever been asked? Please send me your CV. Please submit your CV. Have you guys ever heard of that? Okay, Wesley, Joseph, you got that. Wow. So just so you guys know, a CV is just almost similar to asking you for your resume, but what I want to show you is something that stands out to me every time I ask someone to please provide me with your CV. So if you notice, it says short for the Latin phrase, right? Do you guys see that? But what's more importantly, do you see the shaded, what's shaded here? Course of life, right? So course of life is really what CV stands for, which I think sometimes when you think about that, it's like, wow, CV, the course of my life, the journey of my life, right? It's highlighting your professional and your academic history. So it's just like a little quick cheat sheet in regards to what a CV means, because I know a lot of times when you're going on these interviews, they might say, instead of saying resume, they might say, can you please submit your CV? Resume versus CV, right? What's the difference? And it shows you here, basically. A resume can be a 1 or 2 pager, basically summarize everything from your skills to your experience. You basically keep it brief and concise. As it relates to a CV, it's more detailed, right? So CV can be as long as 3 to 4 pages, depends on the profession. So for example, let's say you are a physician, or you're doing something in chemistry, biology, where you might have, publications, for example. A CV would probably be better because it would be lengthier to capture all of the experience that you have. Most commonly used right now are resumes. What is a chronological resume? Chronological resumes are standard for most employers. It basically lists your recent jobs within the last 10 years. So I just want to make sure that I capture that, because a lot of individuals always ask me and they say, hey, Gisela, how come I only have to put 10 years on my resume? Because you only go 10 years back when you're submitting your resume. And if selected for the position, when they're doing a background check on you, they're only checking for 10 years. So let's say, for example, you had something that was 20 years ago. Not saying that you can't list that on your resume. If it is in relation to your experience, you can, but if it is not, then you do not have to list that. It's not mandatory or required. So the only reason I put this picture up is because I just talked about CV, I talked about resume, I talked about chronological and function. So this was actually me when I started, trying to figure out about all these resumes. Like, why can't it just be one? right? We just consider it just resume and that's it, right? So this picture is actually very realistic because it's very confusing when you think about it. So for right now, we'll just continue with resume, but I wanted to expand and let you know a little bit more about the different choices that you can use. So resume 101, you always have to start at resume 101. You know why? Because this is usually where we find the most errors. So I'm just gonna go through them really quickly. Font style and size must be consistent. That means you cannot have larger font in the middle and then maybe bigger fonts at the end. It has to be consistent. Your resume should always be black font preferred. I know everyone says that their resume is, but sometimes you do find, depending on what you did using the program or the software, that it might have another color on it. So you would want to just make sure that you highlight everything and make it formatted to black. Contact information must be up to date. So important. Let me tell you why. So as a hiring manager right now, because I am a hiring manager, I receive resumes. And sometimes I receive resumes and I actually wish I had the one earlier that I received, and the resume actually did not have contact information on it. It didn't have an email address. It didn't have a phone number. So most of the times you have an email address and a phone number, but ask yourself these questions. Is the phone number going to say, you've reached this number in error? Is it going to say, this mailbox is full, right? And these are the things that we consistently hear, which obviously means that we can't reach you. So that's why you always want to make sure that that is always up to date. Add your LinkedIn URL to your resume. How many of you guys on the platform have LinkedIn? In the chat. Does anyone have LinkedIn? Okay. Okay. So having your LinkedIn or URL is very good to put on your resume. You can actually put that right next to your email address or underneath your email address, depending on how your resume is formatted. Spelling and grammar accuracies are important. When you're using Word, depending on which year for that program or the software that you're using, you have to make sure that the spelling and grammar is accurate. Sometimes what it does is it changes words for you because it feels that this is the word that you're trying to correct it to, even though it's not. You actually want that exact word. So just make sure that the spelling and grammar is always accurate. Month and year of employment must be in sequence, right? So absolutely, Wesley, good point. Absolutely. Month and year of employment always must be in sequence. Your education must be listed. I'm such a big believer of education. It doesn't matter if you don't have a master's, if you don't have a bachelor's, if you have an associate's, if you just have a certification, even as low as a trade school, what have you. Any type of education should always be listed on your resume. For any position that you apply for, before it talks about the job duties, it talks about the requirements, and first and foremost, that requirement is always going to be in education. If you have started school, and let's say you're not finished, that does not matter. You still must put that on your resume. It's so important. It could be a deal breaker for a lot of people, because if that position says, for example, you need to have a bachelor's degree, and let's say you have an associate's, but you're going to be graduating in another 5 or 6 months, that still means that you technically can be a candidate for that position. So you definitely want to make sure that you add your schooling on your resume. The length of resume, I always say, let's discuss, is very subjective. A lot of people tell me, hey, Gisela, sometimes I hear that I'm not supposed to have 3 pages. And then what happens is they cram everything in and then everything fits into 1 page. And you can tell like it's just all stuffed in. There's like really no space, right? So it's very subjective. Your resume can be 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, as long as the content in the resume is accurate. That is all that matters, okay? If you speak another language, bilingual skills, please also mention that. Even if you are intermediate with those skills, please mention that. There's a lot of positions that do require bilingual speaking individuals for those roles, but we would not know if they're not listed. So I think everybody's really waiting for this one on how to make your resume stand out, because that seems to be the focus of everything. So let's walk through this. Start by developing your professional summary. So does everybody have their resume with them, in front of them? If not, definitely grab your resume, because you want to make sure that you make these updates as you go. Thank you, Eupholia, for responding. Definitely make sure you have a notepad and take notes on these things, right? Developing a professional summary replaces objective. So if you still have that word objective on your resume, thanks, Wesley. If you still have that word there, you need to remove that word. Objective is actually the old version of doing resumes, right? So we have a new version and then we have an old version. If you have objective on your resume, you're probably utilizing the older version. So you want to just change that to professional summary, or you can change it to skill highlights. Tailor your resume to fit the job. Utilize a job description. I was speaking to Marvin about this earlier. When I see candidates that come and interview with me, the job description for the role that you are applying to, please don't highlight that and copy it straight on your resume, right? At least be a little bit creative in changing some of the wording around so it doesn't look like you just copied and paste. And you also want to add your own skills into it, right? So tailoring your resume, yes, look at the job, do your research, make sure that you're looking at what those responsibilities consist of, right? And now you're going to take, obviously, you know, some key elements of the job description and incorporate that into what you already have. All right, but just make sure you're not copying verbatim. Highlight your skills, like I talked about, whether that's intermediate or advanced. Okay, utilize the right context of words, right? So just make sure that the context is appropriate for the sentence that you're using to describe your experience. Gaps of employment is okay. It is okay. You know why? Because life happens. And as a hiring manager, a recruiter, I've probably did everything, you know, under the sun as it relates to HR. Gaps of employment is normal, especially in the day and age that we're living in. So if you do have a gap of employment, what I do suggest you do is to just make sure that you're labeling it as these examples that are set forth here, right? So let's say you're a full-time parent, or you had to go on maternity leave. You know, you might be, you know, taking care of an elder or someone that requires your assistance, maybe a full-time student, or you were furloughed, medical leave, military, all of those are acceptable now. You just want to make sure that you list that in regards to the gap in employment. More effective ways to make your resume stand out. Start strong. Again, start with the summary that we talked about as far as the accomplishments that you have done. That summary that you guys have at the top of your resume, let me just tell you a little bit about that. That is your selling point. When I first read a resume, the first thing I'm looking at is that summary, because that's your sell, right? That's telling me that you are who you are, what you've accomplished, what experience you have, what your skill sets are. That is your selling point. So always make sure you have a strong summary. Emphasize results rather than responsibilities. So when we talk about results, talk about the maybe projects that you may have accomplished. You can also talk about maybe you saved the organization X amount of dollars by doing step 1, step 2, or step 3. So always emphasize on results. Customize for the job you want, which we talked about before, and then highlight changes in growth. So if you were at a company or an organization, and let's say you had a promotion, that promotion should be there. The resume should show that you were promoted from one position to another. That's definitely something that stands out, right? So you want to make sure that you capture that as well. Let's take a look at a resume, but I will pivot because I see Joseph has a question. Does the heading have to be consistent with the font size and text? It should be, but obviously the heading would probably consist of your name. So the name is fine because that always stands out as being a little bit bigger in size than the rest of the content of the resume, so that's fine. But you want to make sure that even though the name is big, that everything else falls in a smaller size. You don't want it to be, you know, kind of in unison. You do want your first name to stand out. Let's take a look at this resume. Okay, so don't laugh because yes, the name is Carmen Sandiego. Obviously I have to change some things around. So let's take a look at Carmen Sandiego's resume, right? So when you take a look at this, I want you to tell me in the chat if you see anything wrong or if this resume is ready for success. Use the chat feature and type in your thoughts, your comments, any feedback you can provide on Carmen Sandiego's resume. What do you guys think? Okay, George, Simone, okay. Eufolia, okay. Kayla, Joseph, okay. Anyone else? Anyone else think this resume is great? Samia? Nadine? Apologies. So as I look in the chat, everyone was actually spot on. Each one of you actually was spot on. So I'm going to assume the general consensus, the consensus of the group says that this resume is not ready for success, correct? And you are correct. There are a lot of things that are off with this resume. The first thing that you see when you look at the resume, you look at Carmen Sandiego, what's missing? There's no contact information, right? Like Joseph mentioned, there's no contact information, no email, no LinkedIn, there's nothing. The summary is there, right? Which we talked about. Remember, we talked about having a strong summary. Is area of expertise, and then it talks about the achievements. What's missing? The education, right? That we talked about, right? There's no education on this resume. So when I look at this resume, it basically tells me this person has no education at all because they didn't list it, right? And to a lot of you guys' point, Samia, yes, there is a lot of typos. Nadine, yes, a lot of, you know, it steered you away as far as the line is concerned. There is a lot of inconsistencies with this resume. Did you guys also notice that where it says the date for security resources, did you notice it just says 9/20? I think it was missing the other two numbers. So that's what I mean about paying attention to small detail like this, right? This is the things that will kind of make you or break you. That's why it's so important to make sure that your resume is on point all the time. Absolutely, Joseph, you are correct. Let's look at another one. So we have Judia Williams, right? Judia Williams' resume. In the chat, what do you think about this resume compared to Carmen Sandiego's? Is there anything that you guys like about Judia Williams' resume that differs? Do you think that there are concerns with this resume? Is it ready for success? What do you guys think? Okay, Eufolia. All right, Joseph. Anyone else? Does anyone think that this resume is good to go? Ready? Ready? I'm presenting this resume tomorrow. Okay. Some people say they like the coloring because it's a little red. It is a little better than the first one. I would have to agree with that. So a couple of things is missing from this resume, although this resume is better than Carmen Sandiego's resume, but there are some things that are missing. And let's point out some of those things, right? So I know we mentioned the education. Did anybody see the education listed on there? I didn't see any education. Nope, I didn't see any education on there. So there's no education. The context of the spelling of the sentences, some of them didn't make sense. And also there are grammatical errors. Grammatical errors do not just have to be obviously words, right? They could be a comma, a period, depending on where it is supposed to be placed. So again, these are little details that kind of set you for success, or we're not ready, or we're not there yet, right? That's a good point, Samia. Samia brought up a good point and says the email address. We talk about inappropriate email addresses all the time. Make sure that the email address that you have is something that is appropriate. I always say to make sure that if it's not uncomfortable for you to say, then you're probably okay. Now I want to play a video for you guys. And I want to have you guys tell me a little bit about what do you think about this interview, right? Because you guys have this interview at the career fair next week, right? So here is a live interview. And I would like to know, what do you guys think about this in-person interview?
Good afternoon. You must be Mr. Wang.
Yes, good afternoon.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Mrs. Clark, the bank manager. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Mr. Wang.
Well, I grew up in China and studied accounting. Then I worked at an accounting firm there for 2 years before coming to the States. I work well with others, and I like to challenge myself to constantly improve my skills.
That's great. As you know, this job is for a bank teller. What would you say are some of your strengths or skills that might help you succeed in this job?
My biggest strength is my attention to detail. That has helped me a lot in this line of work. Also, I work well under pressure.
Wonderful. And what would you say are some of your weaknesses?
One of my biggest weaknesses is asking for help when I need it. I'd like to do better at that.
I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Wang. What can you tell me about some of your goals over the next few years?
My primary goal is to gain more work experience, so a position like this would help me meet that goal. I'd also like to learn more about the different aspects of banking.
I think those goals are very smart. I also want to ask you what salary range you'd be most comfortable with.
I would be hoping to start somewhere between $35,000 and $38,000 a year, which is based on my experience in education.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you today. Do you have any questions for me?
Can you tell me about the working hours?
We'd like whoever fills the position to work 9 to 5 each weekday. There may be some occasional overtime.
All right. Thank you. And when do you expect to be making your decision?
We'll give you a call within a week and let you know. Do you have any other questions?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Well, if you think of any more, you're always welcome to call me.
Thank you so much.
It was great to meet you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you as well.
Okay, I'm back. So in the chat, what did you guys think about that interview? What did you guys think? Did you think the interview went well? Did you think the interview could have been better? Okay. 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 Interesting, Katrina, interesting. So just looking at your responses, I get excited because, like I said, I always, I research these interviews, right? Because some people say that they try to be this master interviewer when it comes to applying to specific positions. So a lot of you guys had great points, and I see them still coming in. So thank you for that. The interview, I think, would just be okay, right? I think it was okay. I wouldn't say it was bad, but I wouldn't say it was great. And I think the consensus agrees with that, right? I also saw someone said that on the interviewer side, right? That was interviewing I call it interviewer, interviewee, right? So the interviewer, the questions were kind of not what you expect, right? But what's interesting is that sometimes the questions that you prepare for the interview is not always the questions that you're asked. And I think that's important to know, right? So when you're interviewing, it's not always the questions that you might study or research on Google or look up on YouTube or ask a friend. We might just freeform the questions and throw curveballs at you that kind of throw you off, right? So always have answers ready, I should say readily available, because you never know what they're going to ask you. So let's talk a little bit more about some skill sets and some more interviews. Let me just go to the next slide here. One second. Okay, can you guys see this? Can you guys see this picture of this individual? And it says, no, no, okay. One second, guys, I think I lost you, so let me bring you guys back to, how about now? Are you guys able to see? Okay, perfect, thank you. Technical glitches, but it's okay. How long do you think a hiring manager or a recruiter takes to look at your resume? So I'm gonna recite this again. How long do you think a hiring manager or a recruiter takes to look at your resume? I want you to put in the chat the number, the minutes, the hours, whatever you feel the answer is. I'm gonna give you 1 minute. Okay, that's the Jeopardy music. So we actually do have someone that actually guessed it. But let me just call out some of the responses because I think that's really interesting, right? So we had 5 minutes, 40 seconds, less than 5, 1 minute, 15 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 seconds, 45 seconds. So do you guys want to know what the actual answer is? So Dara actually guessed it correctly. And the answer is 6 seconds. So 6 seconds, did you guys hear me say that? 6 seconds, 6? Compared to what we saw as far as, yeah, Euphalia, that's what I said. Wow, is right. Katrina, that emoji was the right one to use. So 6 seconds, right? Because think about it, right? Depending on the volume that that organization or the company has, Nobody has the ability to sit down and look at a resume for a minute, 45 seconds. You know, it has to be quick and fast. And that's why you have to make sure that your resume stands out. You have to make sure you are setting yourself to stand out amongst the rest, because 6 seconds, when you really think about it, is not a lot at all. So recruiters take an average of 6 seconds to scan a resume. Let's get back to the look is as important as the content. So do not leave anything out on your resume. All pertinent detail needs to be captured in your resume. Make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're proofreading your resume. I always say ask 3 people to check, or you can ask Resume Journeys myself. Definitely feel free to send it to me and I can do that for you too. Content influences the conversation all the time. So just make sure that the content is accurate. Again, it's a selling point, right? Your resume is your selling point. So just keep that in mind. Explain the situations clearly, but briefly. So when you're discussing that, whether it's on your resume itself or on your interview, make sure that you're explaining clearly, right? Because you don't want the individual to have to ask you 1 or 2 or 3 times. Show that the situation has ended or is no longer a factor. What does that mean? So like, let's say, for example, if you had a position that you're no longer with, right? And you happen to divulge to that interviewer, I left the position because my personality was not really working out with the leader's personality. You know, there was some things, there were some challenges. Maybe I started the position and, you know, I was falsely led to believe that it would encompass all of the things that I wanted to do, and it didn't work out. So you kind of want to make sure that whatever you are mentioning, especially if it's negative, which I always say to steer away from that, but in the event that you do want to divulge, just always make sure that you are careful with what you're saying, okay? Everybody wants to make sure that you're always 100% committed to the job, okay? And the only reason I said that is because I actually interviewed an individual that actually told me that she left her position because she actually had an argument with her boss. So she left because she had an argument and she was just looking for another, something different, right? So we always know not to, you know, talk negatively about the individual, or if you had a certain circumstance at that position, you never want to bring that up. Always reiterate your interest in their position. I usually say when, you know, you're speaking to the hiring manager, let them know why you're interested in the role, which equals to doing your homework and your research. Always do your homework. Chuck is a big believer of that. You'll probably hear him say that all the time because he always says that. Do your homework, research the organization before you interview, right? Resume mistakes, big pet peeves here. Too many graphics. If you have a lot of graphics on your resume, not necessary, okay? Unaccounted employment. If the employment is there and you basically were there for 1 month, for example, and you don't really have much context for that position, you really do not need to put that there. Also, if you did not collect a W-2, here's a big tip for you. If you did not collect a W-2 and you did volunteer work, that means that job was not a paid job. It is okay for you to leave that off your resume if you choose to, okay? Again, it's a W-2, if it's not a W-2 paying where you received, you worked, they took taxes out, you got to check. And if it's just volunteer work off the books, you do not have to put that on your resume if you do not want to. Not saying that you have to remove it completely, but I know some people had asked me that as well. We talked about the inappropriate email addresses, words that you don't understand. So if you're writing the resume or someone's writing it for you and it doesn't make sense, that means it doesn't make sense to the reader, right? If it doesn't make sense, you probably just do not want to use that context. Personal details, this is a big one. Hobbies. I like kayaking, I like skiing, you know, sometimes I like swimming. That sounds great, but that doesn't need to be on the resume, right? So if you have hobbies on your resume, as wonderful as they may be, you can remove those. Home address is not required. That's huge. Does anybody know that your home address is not required anymore on your resume in the chat? Wesley, me too. So yes, for those that didn't know, your home address is not required for your resume. Let me tell you why. Again, HR insider information that I'm trying to let you guys absorb. When we look over your resume, okay, it's in a system, an ATS system, okay? You technically have to put your information in that ATS system. One of the key components that you're putting in is your address. So if the organization is looking, or the individual that's part of the organization is looking at your CV or resume, you do not have to put your address. And to be honest, a lot of people, to your point, do not want to put the address because it becomes biased in a sense, where let's say you live in another state and now you're applying for something that is a million miles away. The question is, how's that person going to get here, right? I see a lot of you guys saying yes. How it becomes a little bit biased, so it's okay to leave your address off. It is not a requirement because they have it anyway once you actually apply for the role, okay? Tell me what you guys think about these bullet examples. So as you're reading it here, right? This is actually came from one of the resumes that I had interviewed. What do you guys think about these bullets? The responsibilities that are listed here in the chat. Do you think these are good? You guys can put yes, no. They're great, awesome. I would use them. What do you guys think? Okay. Okay. Okay, great. I love what I'm seeing. Great. Great. Okay, so a lot of you guys said it's kind of like half and half. Some said they liked, some said, there's a couple of things missing. You know, I kind of like the words, you know, no numbers might be mentioned, should say more achievements. It's actually okay. So let's look at something else, right? Just remember this, right? Make sure you keep an eye on this real quick, right? We looked at this. Now look at this. Do you guys see a difference? In the chat, I think everyone should be putting yes in that chat. Do you see a difference between the first set that we just looked at and the second one? Okay. Yeses, yes, wows. Impressive, right? So that's the difference in regards to, yes, you guys are all right. What a big difference it makes, right? When you're looking at the responsibilities that that individual did and how this was transformed, right? So just keep an eye on that and relate that to your own resume, okay? How to prepare for your interview in person or virtual. Some of these things are straightforward, but I just want to make sure that I pick out a few of them. Research the company. Chuck's favorite line, research the company. So you guys have Estee Lauder, you have Morgan Stanley, for example. You have all of these organizations. Research the company. Know the facts about the company because you can incorporate that into your selling point, okay? Make sure that you arrive 10 minutes virtually to your interview. I had one today, the person was late. We always know when you arrive late or you arrive early. Make sure you guys are on time, okay? Since you guys are all doing virtual interviews, I think these are key elements for that. Again, make sure you're in a quiet location. Don't have a fish tank in the back that has a lot of, you know, turtles and, you know, piranhas or whatever is going on in the fish tank. And I said that because that actually did happen and you don't want to know what happened to the turtle and the actual fish and the other piranha looking, person in the tank. But you want to make sure that you have no interruptions and no distractions, okay? Make sure you have sufficient cell service. Had that the other day. Someone did a virtual interview, it was in their car and their phone died, right? So if you're using your phone or your laptop, make sure it's charged, probably a good thing, right? Dress for the part. it doesn't matter if you're not coming in for an interview, you still have to dress the part. You still got to dress the part. Even if you're dressing from the waist up, you still got to make sure you're dressing the part. Trust and believe, right? So that is so important. You definitely want to look the part. Just because you're virtual doesn't mean there's any change. And also be prepared to answer behavioral questions. But like I talked about, never expect that they're going to be behavioral questions. And what those are, tell me about a time, right? Usually they all start with that. In the chat, has anybody ever heard, tell me about a time? Can you provide, right? That's usually how the behavioral questions, right? Your folio, yes, and those are the behavioral questions that everybody usually gets prepared for, right? So let's talk about top skills on the resume, right? We have conflict resolution, problem solving, collaboration, leadership, organizational, time management, computer and tech skills. Awesome. This is some great skills. But in the chat, does anybody know what skill is missing? Does anybody know what the top skill on your resume should be? Anybody want to take a guess on the chat? Anybody? What skill is missing? So, and Dara, yes, you guys are correct. Communication, communication. Yes, Anna, communication is key. That should be on the top of every resume, communication, okay? So just make sure you always have communication on your resume. You need to be able to communicate in any position that you are acquiring. These are just, you know, one of my biggest pet peeves and some kind of tips in a sense. So really quickly, just make sure that you're cleaning up your social media because hiring managers do look at it. If your Instagram is open, I would definitely make it private because they do look at that, even though that's weird, right? How is it a hiring manager is looking at my Instagram or my Facebook? They are, just like they're looking at your LinkedIn. Make sure that it is appropriate, right? Thank you letters should always be sent within the first 24 hours. Does anybody send thank you letters anymore in the chat? Do you guys send thank you letters? Yes? No? I might have forgotten. I should see a lot of yeses because at that career fair next week, all of those employers, you guys have to have that thank you letter ready. It should already be typed up and ready to send after your interview. Trust me, it makes a difference, okay? Elevator pitch. When you guys start your interview, make sure that when they ask you to tell me about yourself, that brief time, make sure that's a strong introduction, okay? Because that's similar to your elevator pitch that we would call it when you're trying to sell yourself. So I did finish rapidly quick because I wanted to get to questions that you may have. So I will turn it over to Q&A. Chuck, Marvin, I don't know if you guys want to read any questions that come out, but please feel free to ask me any questions at this time that you would like in regards to your resume. Again, this is free knowledge. You can't beat that. You don't have to pay for anything. You have the direct source right here.
Gisela, great job. Thank you so much for what you do. I never get tired of this. I can sit here through each one of your sessions over and over again because you do impart the information they need to know to move forward. There is a question here from Lisa, I think. You see it in there? You see the question, Gisela? I've always been told not to use functional because recruiters think someone is hiding something. Your thought about that?
My thought about that is, I wouldn't say that. I don't think a functional resume means you're hiding anything. Again, it is subjective to what you prefer. Everybody's different. Every recruiter and hiring manager is different. But I wouldn't say that that's because you're hiding anything. Functional resumes are accepted just like any other CV or chronological resume. So I would definitely not worry too much about that comment, to be honest.
Okay. Lisa, does that go with you? Okay. One thing I noticed when you were making the presentation, when the young man came for the interview, that was a result of him having submitted his resume. or his application. That's what got him to that position where he's sitting there in front of the recruiter. If you notice, the recruiter didn't say anything about what was on the resume, but in many cases they do. First time they ever, in fact, next week will be a perfect example of that. The first time they're meeting you, you have a resume in front of them and they have you. And at which time, the tip I have to offer, know what's on your resume. Don't have them reading down there 8 years ago, you did that, and you're saying to yourself, I did, know what you put down in writing. that can lose the game for you real quick when you don't know your own resume. You have a question there from Norris.
I saw that one. What is the best practice regarding the use of periods at the end of each sentence in a resume? I'll let you know a quick answer to that. You're either going to use them or you're not. There's no preference or not. So if that resume does not have periods at the end, just make sure that you follow the whole format and remove all the periods. Okay, it's not a deal breaker on the periods at the end of the sentence. So you're fine, Nomsa. And also, I did want to let you guys know, as a special surprise, Chuck didn't even know about this one, so he's definitely going to be surprised at that. But we are in what month? We're in Black History Month, which is a month that I am very, very passionate and proud about. So I wanted to let you guys know, one, that I appreciate you joining the workshop. And with that being said, I am giving away free consultation and critique on everyone's resume that joined this workshop. Okay, so we will work out the details, but I wanted to let you guys know that is what I'm offering. So it's a free critique. No, you don't have to pay for anything. I'm just going to take a look at it and let you know yay or nay, and hopefully that will help you guys out.
Very nice of you, my dear. But you're the giving person. That's why you're here. Thank you for that. We appreciate
There's another question. There's another question, Gisela, from LinkedIn.
Okay. Did I miss that one? Is it from Deandra?
Yes.
Okay. Deandra says, is Deandra on LinkedIn is asking, is city, state, and zip code only acceptable? No, Deandra. Actually, if you take a look, and you guys can look, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm very active. It is not a requirement, and it's not only acceptable. You don't have to list your city, state, and zip code. If it is asking you that, you can actually just put it to just New York, or you can actually just put ... and just move on, and it will go to the next field. So it's not required for you to put that information on there.
I think you wowed them with your knowledge here.
Yeah, I see a lot of wows and thank you. So I guess you guys like the presentation.
Wow moments. Good stuff. Good stuff. And I hope everybody's already applied for the virtual career fair for next week. Don't wait for last minute. You want to see what job opportunities are out there, and we're sending those only to people who have registered. That's what Marvin and his team does daily. Send out the career opportunities. You want to know what position at which of the 17 companies you're going for. You need to come prepared. You're right, Gisela. I feel it's most important to do research on anything like that. You need to know the company. Go to the LinkedIn page of a recruiter. Find out what school they went to. Be surprised. They might went to the same school you did. And that's a talking point. Oh, I went to Howard too. What it's worth. It's all good stuff to keep in mind when you have an opportunity to make a first impression. Did we get all the questions? I'm wondering.
I think I got all the questions. Again, if you guys have more questions and maybe you just didn't want to ask them on this platform, it's fine. Again, you can always reach out to me via email, Instagram. Feel free to ask me any questions at any time. Anyone will tell you I'm always willing to help. Wesley has a question real quick. how to highlight my non-professional experience with volunteering on a resume. So Wesley, you would treat that just as if that position was not a volunteer position, okay? And what I mean by that is all your volunteer experience, you would elaborate on that, right? You can list all of your volunteer experience on your job, or all of your volunteer experience, but just make sure you elaborate on everything you did as a volunteer. I've also seen that as well, but just make sure you elaborate.
And speaking of elaboration, we're going to send you out a quick 5-question survey to everyone that registered for tonight's event. A couple of questions that we like to get answered that help us a lot in the development of what we're doing. So if you can, please take the 2 minutes or the 6 seconds, whatever time it takes to get that done, and send that back to us. We could use that information for our growth.
Chuck, I don't know if it's, I just saw one more question, but I don't want to go over time.
No, you're good. We have to 7:15.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
So
good.
NOMSA says if you're doing a career change, must you mention this in your summary? No. Nope. You do not have to mention that you're doing a career change at all in your summary. Not required. But what I can tell you is that if you are doing a career change, make sure you talk about past and current skills. So all the skills that you have at the previous or the current position that you're at, and talk about how it correlates or is transferable. Big poster kid again, you'll always hear me say transferable skills is key, okay? I believe in that. Any other skill could be utilized for any position. So definitely make sure you talk about that. But no, you don't have to you don't have to actually have that in your summary that you're doing a career change. Nadine, you're welcome. Anna, you are welcome.
Did everybody look at the questions they wrote at the very beginning? And was everything covered? Any loose questions out there we can help you with tonight?
Anna, NAMSA, you're very welcome.
Yes.
So you're welcome, Eufolia, yes. So again, when you guys are at the career fair next week, right? I'm just looking at a lot of the organizations that are here. Again, there are a lot. You guys have a really good lineup of organizations. Please, please, please research those companies and make sure you put your best foot forward. Don't be nervous. I know it's easier said than done, but nobody takes off credit for being nervous at an interview, okay? Just remember that. If you're nervous, you don't lose points because you're nervous, because everyone is nervous. The person that's interviewing you could be nervous. So just keep that in mind.
You'll have a minimum of 8 minutes with the recruiters. I said average of 8 minutes with each one of the recruiters. Take full advantage of that. I heard Gisela talk about your elevator pitch. Hone that down. Get in front of the mirror. Practice on your best friend. Say, hey, this is what I want to talk about myself. Get all those skills kind of set up so that when you walk in there next week, you feel a lot more comfortable about what you're doing. Plus, your resume is going to look great. Can't beat that.
Don't
That's what
forget
you
your
want.
thank you. Don't forget your thank you card that
Yes.
you're gonna have ready, right? So as soon as you finish, you already remember what Gisela told you. I would definitely have that thank you card written and ready so that you'll be the first one to send that thank you card after the interview. Remember, the first person is usually the one that they usually like, wow, I just finished interviewing them and they just sent this really nice thank you card. So remember that. Katrina, you're welcome. Dara, absolutely not. I would not, that is not a requirement to show on a resume. A resume is blank. It has no specification on color or diversity. It's a blank resume. Anna says, is a cover letter required with the resume? Interesting. A lot of people ask me that. So if you have a resume and you have the cover letter, it's okay. If you don't have it, it's okay. Most people say they like a cover letter because it just looks well put together. Really, it's like the complete package. That's what it is. A cover letter just really completes the package. But at the end of the day, what they're going to do is take off the cover letter, is going to go to the side, and they're really going to start looking at the core of the resume, which is your experience. Cover letters come into play when you're doing a change in direction, right? Like I think somebody mentioned, they want to do a change in their career. They're pivoting, right? You want to do something different. That's where a cover letter comes into play, because in that cover letter, you can actually explain all of the skills that you have from your position that you currently have and how that's going to transfer or correlate to the position that you're going after. So Anna, hopefully that answered that question. And just so you know, when you apply with the cover letter online, once you apply to it and it's online, they really just show the resume. When they send it to the hiring manager, like let's say recruiters would send me resumes, they're not sending me the cover letter. They're only sending me the resumes. Okay, so just keep that as a mental note, right? Okay, good, great. So, I mean, for the career fair, is everybody ready, excited? Are we, just by the lineup, because I keep looking at this lineup, I know Chuck was mentioning it, but I don't know if you guys noticed, they have some really, really awesome companies. Like I'm looking at this lineup and I'm like, wow, these companies are serious. Like, this is like really great.
We had two join today.
Say it again.
Two of them joined today. That, from
wow.
what you know, two more joined. It's up to 17 right now, and we can't say no yet because we said the deadline was the 21st. But it's just amazing. It really is. Like, you know, the opportunities are there, and they do have the positions available. Take a position if it's in South Dakota. Take a position if it's in Lyon, France, or Stockholm, Sweden. See the world. Enjoy yourself. You only get a chance to go through this life once. Take the opportunities where they lie, is my word to you. Take a job in LA or Chicago. You'll enjoy that. Get out of New York. Get away from here. In fact, where's everybody from? Everybody's chimed in. We don't know, do we?
Well, I think Andrew is ready. I think.
Oh, Andrew's ready. Andrew, you on? Andrew's got
again,
the last 5 minutes.
Thank you again for taking the opportunity to spend time with me. And I really hope that you guys learned or took away something, even if a piece of information from this session. And again, thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much, Resume Journey, providing their insight and tips for another resume session. Again, like my colleague said before, there's 17 companies coming. These are great companies, Fortune 500 companies. These are companies that are looking for talent. This is our 8th virtual career fair session. And I can't say enough the amount of people that helped us pull it off, between Marvin, Lucas, Chuck, Resume Journey providing tips and insights prior to the event. We have our other director, Molly Crease, doing the same thing on her end as far as coaching and being prepared, getting you prepared during business hours. But more importantly, this event is for you to be great. This is your time to really take it to another level. And we're here to help you, and we're here to support you doing that. So I want you to really take advantage of this opportunity, really spread forward the career event to friends and family, of people looking or disenchanted with their job or not feeling that vibe. Hey, this is a great time for a change, great time for a switch. Why not you be great for the next following year? So on behalf of my president, Norville Barrington, the Metro New York Chapter Board, I wish you a very pleasant evening. I hope to see everyone next week. Please check our link tree for more events. There are a lot of events that were taking place between Monday through Thursday. And again, you know, this is Black History Month. is a month to celebrate. It's a month to celebrate Black excellence. But more importantly, it's a starting point for your greatness. I wish you a very prosperous rest of the year. Thank you.